we talk about languages and language learning and all sorts of other stuff, and we play games. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks. Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
El hospital.
還元一級の先というのは、本当に誰も知らない字ばっかりでしょうね。私は Okay, we've leveled up and it is time to pick another language. Mod för är tröttare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek. We're doing Greek when we get back. Ben neredeyse her gün okula gidelim. Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil. The same word fil as this. Meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is sword, and that also means elephant. Okay. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks. Ça, c'est ça, que c'est ça, non ça, c'est ça, sol chi sa che nulla sa, ne sa più di chi ne sa. Ecco. Bonjour et bienvenue à Hyper Polyglotting avec Élise. Moi, c'est Élise, traductrice, éditrice et écrivain avec 20 ans de travail. Et ça, c'est la transmission en direct ou en jeu des jeux, surtout GeoGuessr en dernier temps. Et parle des langues, de la linguistique, de l'acquisition des langues. 10-159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Nej. Man. Igen. Ja. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Barbaz, okay, Barbaz is duck. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon. Sotto le frasche del capanno 4 gatti grossi stanno. Sotto 4 grossi sassi, 4 grossi e grassi gatti. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Facile. Sì, ecco, la gente, è la cosa che mi dice la gente, sempre che scoprisce che quante lingue parlo, io sempre avevo l'impressione, diciamo, di che non era così, non era tan così, ma poi, dopo di aver visto qualche poliglota in YouTube, una delle cose che avevo scoperte era giustamente che la metodologia usata da quella gente poliglota che non avevo mai conosciuta prima, era più o meno la stessa metodologia che usavo io. I find a computer or what? Here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for or, fuck sounds vaguely like Hogun and the hook in Hogun in Korean or. Hello and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I am Elise, translator, writer, and editor with 20 working languages, and this is the stream where we're going to play some more shogi, and we're going to talk languages and language learning. ハイパーポリグロッティングの多言語チャンネルへよくぞお越しいただきました。これから将棋をやって言語取得についての話をいたしますのでお楽しみください。よし。Okay. Gonna do a round. I'm just gonna warm up a little bit over here against the computer. I have to say, I've done really quite well recently. In the sense that every time I've actually won, which is not a lot, it's been on stream, so people have actually gotten to see it. Yes. Okay, what's going on here? 核は随分前進してるようですね。This Kaku, which behaves kind of like a bishop, has gone way outside of the normal area in the early game here, as far as I'm aware. Hmm. じゃあどういうことになる？飛車は相手の飛車はその2,3というところにありましてさ、そこまで進んで守り手がないんですね。It's undefended, but there's not a whole lot I can do about that at the moment. Hello, Badger. How you doing? Let's see if I can make life a little bit more complicated for the yeah, okay, that knocked back the kaku. was threatening to take it there. I don't really see what the point of that move is, which doesn't really mean anything because I'm not actually very good at this game. I don't play it much. There may be a very good reason to do what the computer just did against me. I do not know it. Okay, 馬が進んできてな。Okay. Right now, I think on king safety I'm ahead. My gyoku, as it's called, is very nicely defended here. This one is kind of out in the middle. There may be a way I can actually take advantage of that. Okay, that is weird, and I do not understand it. Oh, wait a second. I mean, this is like the equivalent of pushing pawns in front of the king. I don't see that this is necessarily a great move for my electronic opponent. Apparently. Just gonna look this up. New AI mode. Try fuck off. I don't want AI mode. Oh, curious about seeing handles instead of names in live chat? YouTube is testing handles in live chat, which will help with privacy, security, and tagging people on mobile. Okay, so this is a thing you... Oh, okay. Yeah, so this isn't a setting I can do anything about. This is YouTube being shitty. Although they say that it's to make an impersonation harder, and I can kind of see that to a certain extent. I mean, it would, since the handles are unique and everything, but on the other hand, on the... Oh, wait. No. No, that is not... Okay, there, I just... won... what? A pawn and a piece. Futo. And I've also got this king in sort of an awkward position here. This is not a position that you would want your king to be in. Okay, I didn't know that that was a great decision. Oh, no, that's my pawn. And of course not. Of course that doesn't work. That's not supposed to work. Okay, we have traded Kaku. And I can now put it wherever I want. So I'm going to put it there. Now the king is actually better defended, which is annoying. Okay, yeah, no, I don't think so. Once again, we do have pawns being pushed in front of the king. Which I am therefore okay. Oh, no, no, no. That's cool. No need to take them down, I don't think. Oh, hell. Okay, well, so I lost that one. I've never beaten the computer yet. But now we're going to try to play an actual person. And I've done really well when I've played an actual person on stream, so here we go, 10-minute game. 対戦相手。お前が後手だ。対局開始。ね。よし。試験飛車。玉の安全のために何かの囲いを講じる必要がありますね。片身の囲い。Wait, what? ただで核をもらったんだな。Okay. Not bad. Not a bad start to the game, I would have to say. I just got a free kaku. Wonder what other freebles I might get. Wait, apparently I also got a free Hyosha. Okay. Oh, cool. Thank you. I was just giving, I was just sent the cover art for final approval today. So we're really getting there. Pretty soon this thing is actually going to be a physical book, which I'm kind of excited about. Right. Okay. Now, the trouble I've got at the moment is that actually My king is in pretty good shape. I mean, my opponent's king is in pretty good shape. And I'm behind on time as well. Let's see. What can I do about all that, I wonder? Saving that kaku for when I really need it.
$5。3分。
Running out of time here.
...2分30秒
悔しいじゃろ。この悔し涙を力に変えるんじゃ。
I would expect so. Okay, got my ass kicked there. I'm gonna go for another one. Yeah.
お前が先生だ。
I mean, it's an interesting situation because it isn't often that you have actually like a new work coming out from somebody who's been no longer with us for a fair while.
試験飛車。
Okay, time to go for some king safety. Interesting choice. Oh, bollocks. Okay. 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 Vaguely irritating situation there. Oh. Oh, okay. Not taking my Hisha after all. You know, I mean, they could have taken it. That would have very much been an option. I think My understanding is it would have been a good option as well. Aki 攻撃。ちょっと馬を斜め後ろにはいけねえから。Okay, either trade or back off. Or a secret third thing that I don't like. That is neither trading nor backing off, and actually puts me in a worse situation than I already was. Okay, yeah. Not keen on that situation. Oh shit, and my king is pinned. Just to make life more interesting. Okay. So, I mean, the question does arise, what the hell I'm supposed to do in this situation in order not to get my ass kicked. Okay. So I do have a move, apparently.
Lose.
I did have a move, and then I got my ass kicked. Okay. These have not been the best games I've played on here.
お前が後手だ。対局開始。
It is an interesting game because it's like chess, except way more complicated in a lot of ways. Okay, これで大手だ。Okay, that could have been a free kaku. But I guess not everybody wants free stuff. Hello there. Yeah, that's... Apparently YouTube is trying out some things. This is their bullshit, apparently. How you doing, Language Mania? Oh, no. That wasn't good. I shouldn't have taken with that. やったことは今まではないんですけど。Okay, that was silly.
7分
I don't think I actually helped myself out much with that one. Ah,
タレフ。
タレフ。タレフってどういう意味？ああ、これで。これで その核は全損になっちゃった。Oh, well, I'm glad that I provide a chillable space. I do try. Okay, this is really not going well for me. Kotenpan にやっつけられているんですね、これ。マジかよ。全くもって。だせえな、これ。
5分
Okay, that's something anyway. One of the wild things about this, the way they set this game up. Oh, yes, happy Halloween as well. Oh, and perfect timing. I got my ass kicked. Just as I was going to say, it is time to take a quick bio break, and then I will be back in just a few minutes. Hi, and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I am Elise, translator, editor, and writer with 20 working languages, and this is where we talk about languages and language learning and all sorts of other stuff, and we play games. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So, anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks. Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
El hospital.
還元一級の先というのは本当に誰も知らない字ばっかりでしょうね。私は Okay, we've leveled up and it is time to pick another language. Morförrättare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek. We're doing Greek when we get back. Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil, the same word fin as this, meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is skor, and that also means elephant. Okay.
This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks.
Ça, ça, ah c'est ça, che c'est ça, non ça, c'est ça, sol chi sa che nulla sa, ne sa più di chi ne sa. Ecco. Bonjour et bienvenue à Hyperpolyglotting avec Élise. Moi, c'est Élise, traductrice, éditrice et écrivain avec 20 ans de travail. Et ça, c'est la transmission en direct ou en jeu des jeux, surtout GeoGuessr en dernier temps. Et parle des langues, de la linguistique, de l'acquisition des langues. 10:159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Night. Night. Come on. Bien. Yo. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Barbaz, okay, Barbaz is duck. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon. Sotto le frasche del capanno 4 gatti grossi stanno. Sotto 4 grossi sassi, 4 grossi e grassi gatti. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Facile. Sì, ecco, la gente... è la cosa che mi dice la gente, sempre che scoprisce che quante lingue parlo. Io sempre avevo l'impressione, diciamo, di che non era così, non era tan così, ma poi dopo di aver visto qualche poliglota in YouTube, una delle cose che avevo scoperte era giustamente che la metodologia usata da quella gente poliglota che non avevo mai conosciuta prima, era più o meno la stessa metodologia che usavo io. I buy a computer or what? And here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for or, what sounds vaguely like hogun and the hok in hogun in Korean or waku in Japanese.
And I'm back. So, after that lackluster performance at shogi, which again is not a shocking thing because I really do not, as limited as my skill at chess is, I am way more advanced at chess than I am at shogi because I've just not really had much
experience playing it. So, and, like, I don't know really a whole lot of theory. So, lackluster is actually to be expected at my level. But at the same time, I'd still like to move on beyond it. So we're going to look at, apparently, there have been a few interesting things going on. It's kind of curious. I was just kind of looking around for and apparently 4 years ago, so this is very topical, there was a Matt versus Japan debate with Oriental Pearl, whose name I have to say I'm not all that keen on the subject of language learning, and I'm kind of curious
Hey guys,
what
so
we're
today
going
I
to
have a
see
cool
on that
guest.
subject. Copiar URL video. Okay, and for anyone who wants to see this whole thing without me talking about it, that's the link here in chat. Turns out I thought that Chloe, the excitable mini golden doodle dog, was playing some sort of a game. It turns out that she's just running around freaking out because she had a bath. And that is what she does, other than just looking extremely scruffy until her hair gets dried.
With me.
Oh wait, I need to get my chat window where I can actually see. Sora the Troll. No, should I? Is this somebody that's a good idea to know? Is this I feel like I've seen that name in a couple of places, but knowing it, I wouldn't say. Who are they and what's their deal? And is there anything interesting that you might recommend us watching on stream in addition to this, or perhaps instead of it even?
Ming from the Oriental Pearl YouTube channel. So you've probably seen her. Her channel's getting really big really quickly. She's really amazing at Chinese and getting pretty good at Japanese as well. And she has lots of cool videos where she goes around Tokyo and interacts with both Japanese speakers and Chinese speakers. And we just recorded a video for her channel where we talk about some of the things that we see in the larger language learning community, particularly the kind of polyglot community that well, we kind of wanted to call out a little bit of the bullshit, but that was something that we both agreed on.
I'm there for calling out bullshit. I do a fair bit of that over here as well.
Today on this video, we're going to be talking about things that we don't agree on. When we chatted really quickly the other day, we had I think it was 2 main points, was it, that we disagree on?
Yes, and I added another one.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, we had such a friendly conversation with each other the other day, and we agreed on probably 90% of stuff that I'm like, this is not going to make an interesting video. Let's talk about the points where we disagree.
I will say, I think points of agreement can be an interesting video. I mean, admittedly, the algorithm likes conflict. But, so, interesting to the algorithm and interesting in general are two different things. But I would say, you know, two people who know about something that's interesting and are in general agreement on it, expanding on what each other are saying, can be, I mean, that totally can be interesting. I mean, as long as the underlying subject is interesting and they're not just repeating, you know, finishing each other's sentences or something. But, okay.
A couple of things that I think we could have some conversation about. You know, at the end of the day, there's more than one way to make an omelet. So you can get to the same level and have the same results with your language learning using different methods. And that's really just what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, have you got a link to that? I'm kind of, because maybe we'll watch that after this.
Okay, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, I think my methods are better, but I mean, yeah, we're all entitled to our own opinion.
Right, of course. Okay, well, we're going to talk about...
Okay, I mean, I haven't heard her actually discuss her methods. I've heard her agreeing with Language Jones, who my opinions on are a bit complicated. on subjects where I was not very much in agreement. Like, I mean, Language Jones in one video about spotting fake polyglots uses the U.S. State Department Foreign Service Institute's figures on how long it takes to learn a language as if they're like some sort of objective metric, when in fact they're based on the Foreign Service Institute's approach to learning languages, which is, in my experience, not great. I've looked at their materials. Maybe, I mean, it's been a while since I looked at their materials. Maybe they've improved in the interim. But the thing is, when you're generalizing from their method without which and their figures on how many hours it takes to reach an unspecified level of fluency in a language, to other people using totally different methods, and then calling somebody potentially a fake polyglot on the strength of that, I think is not great. And she seemed, and I mean, I don't know if she's familiar with the FSI or she's familiar with the history of those figures, but she didn't call that out. So I think there probably will be some disagreements that I have as well.
This, Matt.
Okay, so what's the first thing that we don't agree on?
The first thing that we don't agree on is taking formal classes. Now, I'm a big proponent of taking formal classes for a couple of reasons, and I have to say...
And I would say it really depends on what a formal class is. Because there are classes that use methods that I would actually say are very good methods to do a class. Like, TPRS, Teaching Proficiency Through Reading and Storytelling, for example, as a method for, teaching a class for beginners, I think actually makes a lot of sense. It really depends on what the class is. So when we talk about taking formal classes versus other things, I will say formal classes did not really get me to where I am in any of my languages to any significant extent. But methodologically, we're talking about like the kind of almost medieval sorts of methods a lot of the time, compared to a lot of the stuff that's going on now with TPRS, etc. But okay.
It made the big difference between the biggest difference for me learning Chinese and Japanese is that foundation. I got in a Chinese language school and then later a Japanese language school from the very beginning, and that set the foundation. I was corrected many times. The teacher really set me straight, and there was this atmosphere of competition in the classroom that...
See, and this is also, when we talk about this, we also have to be aware of, confirmation bias is a thing. If you think that this is the way you're supposed to learn, and you ultimately get a certain result, it is easy to think that actually, played a significant or decisive role in it to convince yourself of that. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the case.
Pushed me to study harder, versus if I'm only self-studying, which I did self-study, of course, but that...
And again, when we talk about self-study, it depends on what kind of self-study we're talking about. There is very, free-form self-study where you don't there are forms of self-study where you're essentially doing the same sort of methods that are very common in a lot of the less effective language learning, formal classes. There's also self-study where you're actually developing your own methodology, and you have a methodology. And then there's self-study where you're just sort of flitting between one thing and another, and you don't have any kind of methodological approach that you're using. You're just kind of using whatever's there. So when we talk about formal classes versus self-study, I think we've got to be very specific about what we're talking about. And and if there's anything that I wish we could do better at when having these sorts of discussions in this space that I'm sort of a little bit invisibly present in, I think it's that specificity. Because Formal classes with TPRS are not the same thing as a formal class where you're memorizing conjugations. Personal, self-study with an approach that combines materials, types of materials, and types of approaches that you found are, fine-tuned for your purposes is different than like any kind of other self-study. I mean, these are very broad categories, and we got to get really down to specifics in order to really make sense of them.
Formal classes as well. If you're only self-studying, I think a lot of people will fail to motivate themselves to keep going, or they'll go at their own pace, and they tend to go slower than if they were in a classroom with some competition.
Okay, not the best freeze frame there. But I will say, I mean, it's like going at your own pace is I would say that's not a bad thing. And speed does not necessarily equal effectiveness. Like, there's a lot of talk in here. A lot of the dodgiest stuff on language YouTube involves, like, the idea that there's, like, you can do this really, really fast. Learn Japanese in a fortnight. Or something like that, and like that's not going to happen. I mean, unless we have a big asterisk next to learn Japanese, where it's like you can say konnichiwa, and people will say "Nihongo jouzu desu ne" to you, and you will think that you've learned Japanese because you can say one thing, and people give you, so. And the competition actually really does cut both ways. I mean, in fact, the whole competition is really kind of toxic to a language acquisition because it tends to create stress. Like, you're comparing yourself to other people. You're trying not to make mistakes. That's going to make you less likely to just make utterances. You're going to spend a lot of time thinking about how to say things rather than just trying to say them and getting, a conversation going, an interaction. And this kind of comes into what we're calling the affective filter. So I don't think ultimately that competition is something that I would actually describe as an asset in a language learning environment. And I really hope at some point she gets into a detailed description of like the nature of the classes she took versus the things that she did did subsequently.
You don't want to look dumb in front of your classmates, right?
This is literally one of the things that actually has been shown to be bad for language acquisition if you're worried about looking silly in front of your classmates because you screw something up. That's literally not necessary. That's literally something that empirically is not great for language acquisition because it can actually make you more hesitant to speak at all.
I did that a couple times and I was irritated and I went back. I'm like, I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm going to learn from these mistakes. I'm not going to say that wrong again. And I'm not going to mess that presentation up tomorrow because I'm going to look like an idiot and they're going to look really good and I'm going to look stupid. So it always motivated me to try harder. So
yeah, okay. But what does try harder mean? I mean, again, I sound like a bit of a broken record, I suppose, but it's like all of these things, there's so much specificity that you need in order to really get into this. But, I mean, competition and worrying that you're going to look bad are actually, I mean, in other words, stress are not really very good things to have as part of a language acquisition routine. That's like, okay, like in the context of, say, baking bread, that's if you, like, took your dough and you decided what really, really will make this dough pop is you add puke to it. Like, no, that's not good, that's not it. So I'm really interested in what she actually did subsequently. Because I feel like maybe she is she may be, and I'm not saying deliberately, I'm saying that she may be perceiving, and she's probably, I mean, I think she perceives it exactly as she's saying it. But I feel like maybe she is overemphasizing things that actually did not play as positive a role as they really did.
Plus,
as she feels that they did.
Just the aspect of having a teacher constantly correcting you.
Like, this is literally another example of things that are toxic to language acquisition.
I know you talked a lot about forming bad habits. Well, a lot of that stuff, I believe, comes from not being corrected.
Yeah, except no, not really. Like, not being corrected is actually kind of how. Yeah, okay. These things have actually been studied, it's worth noting. So it isn't just like individual opinions here. There has been empirical work done on this. And first of all, the idea of like forming bad habits, i.e. fossilization, it's really not a thing. It doesn't happen. These things iron themselves out on their own. People are constantly changing how they talk, whether that's in their native language or some language they've acquired subsequently. I mean, this kind of like outright error correction is really not good for the process.
Of course. So how do you get corrected? Well, you have to have someone correcting your writing, correcting your speaking, setting you straight. And I think it's okay for you to try to put the pieces together. Well, how should this sentence be made? I'm just going to take a shot in the dark and see if it works. And if it doesn't, the teacher will correct you. And I learned that way. I have no long-lasting bad habits in Chinese.
First of all, okay. I mean, I think we should always be a little bit careful in these sorts of self-assessments. Because, I'm not in a position to assess her Chinese. My understanding is she speaks it really, really well. I would not doubt that. But the thing about lasting bad habits is actually the more you interact in the language, the more you interact with the language, the more, especially when it comes to grammar, the more you're reading on your own steam in the language, reading things that are interested, you will actually be sort of ironing out a lot of these things on your own without having somebody constantly interrupt you and say, no, that's not how you're supposed to say that.
Even
Happy Halloween, Riveroon.
Taking these lessons and starting with speaking from the very beginning. I really don't have any bad habits that I couldn't get rid of in the classroom.
Well, I would argue that you were able to reach a really high level of Chinese without any bad habits in spite of speaking early on, not because...
I would tend to agree there, because...
of speaking early on. But to kind of take a step back, because I think that the speaking early thing is a topic that we're going to get to next.
I mean, what I'm really interested in is, she said that this is what she did for the first couple of years. Okay. But what did she do subsequently? Like, what did she do after that? And at what point did she feel that, was she speaking at the high level that she's currently speaking at?
But to focus on the classroom setting, so it sounds like you basically say there's two benefits of taking classes. One of them is that it provides you with motivation and an external kind of structure to keep you consistent, and the other one is you get corrections from the teacher. So because I believe that you shouldn't speak from the beginning, precisely because you'll make a lot of bad habits, but we'll get to that.
Here's where I disagree with him. I don't think it's a matter of you shouldn't speak. It is more a matter of you shouldn't be forced to speak. People will start to speak when they've gotten to the point where they actually feel confident forming an utterance. And pushing that too hard early on can be counterproductive. But I don't think people should be trying not to speak, and I don't think people should be worried about forming bad habits, because again, these things will tend to iron themselves out.
The fact that if you're self-studying, you don't have as much access to corrections isn't really relevant, because I don't think you should be speaking in the beginning anyway. So then it just comes down to the motivational aspect. And I can totally see how taking a class would help you stay consistent and help you stay motivated, but I don't think it's the only way to do that. And
I agree with him here. And again, class does not equal class. Class exclamation mark equal sign class. She's describing a very kind of traditional classroom setting before a lot of the empirical work came, as designed before a lot of the empirical work came out, showing that actually is not a good way of teaching anyone anything. I mean, well, teaching anyone languages, anyway. Yeah, I mean, and it's wild to me that that this discussion is taking place often as if this stuff didn't exist.
I think that it's kind of a suboptimal way to provide that sort of motivation and structure, because first of all, you're in this classroom with a bunch of other people who still suck at the language, and you have to hear their awful pronunciation, all their mistakes, which is feeding bad input into your brain.
I mean, possibly. I mean, it depends on what the motivation is. Is the motivation not to screw up? Is the motivation not to fall behind compared to other people? Or is it that the motivation is the class is fun? You're enjoying it. You come up with, you know, the interaction is nice and pleasant, and you learn, and you find that you learn things and improve as you're doing it. You know, there are different kinds of external motivation that you can get from a classroom setting as well. I mean, I'm not anti-classroom here, but, you know, there are different ways that can look.
And also, the pace that you're going to be going at is going to be determined by someone else, kind of almost arbitrarily, right? It's like the teacher's going to...
I do not know the rundown. I think it is to do with a video she did where she was pointing out areas of Tokyo where there was, like, graffiti and where there was homelessness, which, it's true, did not used to be a thing if you go back, you know, if you go back 20 years, but, like, neoliberalism has been biting, and the result of that is that you get these, that, you know, you get people who can't afford housing. You get people who are, you know, essentially falling through the increasingly large cracks in the social safety net. I mean, and other people had some things to say about what she had to say, and I have not actually watched any of it, so I honestly don't know, but I know that there's, like, some sort of, you know, discussion around this.
Make sure that the class moves at the average pace that people tend to go at. But I think that if you're really motivated, you're generally going to be able to move more quickly than the average that classes tend to move at. And my experience taking Japanese classes in both college and high school was that the pace was really slow, and I was able to go way faster because I had a lot of motivation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's, like, internal motivation and external motivation. Why are you doing this thing?
Is the difference, Matt? You went to college classes, which I think are pretty bad for learning languages.
Wait a second, but why are they bad? Now I'm curious, and I hope she's going to say why. Because, again, so far this discussion has had the various frustrating things. The things that I find frustrating, which is just the general lack of specificity.
Okay, so we're in agreement about that.
I'm talking about language school.
But language schools, I mean, what are these language schools doing, though? Because a lot of the time, a lot of them actually use the literal exact same textbooks and the exact same methods as the classes that you would take at university or high school. Like, what are these classes?
Especially the Chinese language school. You're saying you're with a bunch of people. We had 5 people in our classroom. We got so much, like...
Okay, I mean, that's a good point. Having a smaller group, I think, is a good thing. And depending on your language and depending on your university, you're less likely to get that in a university setting. Okay, fair point.
One-on-one time with a teacher, and so many pronunciation drills, things like that. The pace was incredibly fast. The pace was faster than someone who is self-studying would do versus...
Well, I don't think you can generalize like that, because what is somebody self-studying doing? I mean, people have different paces entirely. People go in different sequences entirely. Like, I mean, like my kind of self-study routine, specifically with Japanese, included all sorts of materials that somebody who is taking the sort of prescriptive approach to, like, teaching classes and stuff would be like, no, that's way too advanced for you.
University course, yeah, I completely agree. I don't think that's a good way to study a language at all. And I would even say that some of the language schools here in Tokyo are not very good. They were not nearly as good as that 5-person class that I had.
Okay, I hope we get some details on this.
20 hours a week, 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday in China. That was like an intensive course. And you have to realize this is how it's being taught in organizations like the CIA. They have people in these intensive language programs. Boom, 3 years, you are fluent. You're like ready.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I mean, the U.S. government standards for what counts as knowledge of another language aren't great, and which is why, to the extent possible, when they're trying to get somebody who needs to pass for a native speaker, they use native speakers to the extent that they can, or somebody who already started out close to it, like.
To do some spy work. This is the orthodox method, and I think it's orthodox for a reason.
Yes, because you can make money with it. Because actually it is much easier to monetize than empirically validated methods.
Because if it's done intense, full immersion in the classroom, along with self-study, along with some other methods and private study.
We still haven't heard a whole lot of details on what this actual method is that she's talking about, which is annoying, other than stress and active error correction. And, I mean, I guess you could say the amount of classroom time is another aspect of the method. I think that's fair. But, like, what's going on in the classroom? What are they actually doing? I mean, she mentioned, like, pronunciation drills. That's worthless.
As well with a tutor. I think it's the winning combination there. And I can't say that I only did those lessons at that time. I was also studying at my house. I was also in the environment. I lived with Chinese people as well, so I'd practice what I learned at the school.
Okay, so she was getting lots of comprehensible input outside of this classroom environment, it sounds like.
And on top of that, I had a tutor after school, 1-on-1, 2 hours a day.
Okay, but what were you doing, though? I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if we're gonna have a discussion about method versus method, you gotta get into detail about what your fucking method is. I mean, this is good. I mean, but it sounds like one of the things she had quite outside of her, outside of her, like, language school setting, was a whole lot of input. She was overhearing Chinese conversations all the time. She was participating in them all the time. She probably listened to, like, Chinese radio and watched Chinese television too. There's so all sorts. So, I mean, to then pin everything on these classrooms that take sort of the non-empirically validated approach, that just feels like confirmation bias.
It was just like a huge amount of Chinese every single day, and I was making mistakes and being corrected, and it just seemed to be a little bit of everything. But the classes were important for the foundation.
Okay, so now that definitely clarifies things for me a little bit.
It doesn't clarify things for me, because we have only gotten the slightest indication of what these classes did. And I would be much more, I would be interested in knowing a lot more about what's going on outside of classes. Because it does not, because there's a huge difference, especially when we're talking about what's effective. What she's describing is not just taking formal classes, and it's not just tutoring. She's also got this environment that is constantly giving her input. And these Chinese people she was living with whom she was interacting with in Chinese, were almost certainly adapting their speech in order to help her understand, because that's just something people reflexively do when they become aware that they're talking with somebody who has, like, limited understanding of the language, of whatever language they're speaking, and it's just sort of a natural thing that goes on. So when we talk about these things, it's like she can say, she may very well, she clearly believes that it's the classes that did it, but it sounds like there's a lot of stuff that would have actually ensured quite a lot of language acquisition anyway.
So if you're saying that when you go to these language schools, they are very intensive, they are going to push you likely harder than you would push yourself if you were self-studying, then I could definitely see how that does add a lot of value. But the reason why I still would never recommend someone to go to a language school is because the methodology and the way that they structure the classes and teach is completely against the way that I think people ideally would acquire a language.
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly her version also... I mean, somebody was footing, either she has a bunch of money saved up that she was able to do this with, or somebody was footing the bill with it. Although, within China, the cost of living tends to be fairly cheap there. So, it wouldn't take a lot of US dollar income to be able to afford, to spend a fair bit on these sorts of things. I mean, from what I've heard, if you're making, the equivalent of $1,000 a month, you are living a living standard that you would just not be able to get in the U.S. on $1,000 a month. So you wouldn't necessarily need a huge amount of money there, but you would probably, in terms of the cost of living in China, need what would be considered to be a fair bit of disposable income.
So, although it's nice that you have that support and that motivation, that structure, the things they're asking you to do are not the most productive things, and that kind of gets...
Yeah, this is my point, yes.
Maybe that would be a good segue into the next point, which is that I don't think you should speak early. And so, to give my take on this one, I agree with the linguist Stephen Krashen when he talks about how there's two different approaches to...
one thing to note is that he doesn't say you shouldn't speak early. He says that you should not force learners to speak early. You shouldn't force them to speak when they're ready. You should give them opportunities to speak, but not push it. His kind of catchphrase in this context is that speech emerges, i.e. it comes on its own if somebody has had enough input that they're starting to be able to formulate utterances spontaneously. So he doesn't say you shouldn't. That is, you shouldn't speak early is actually ALG. Is it NLG, like natural language growth? Now I'm not sure. But that is like a variation on what he says. But what Krashen himself says is you should not, you shouldn't be forcing people to speak before they're ready, basically.
Gaining linguistic ability. One is what we might call the skill building approach, which is where you consciously learn about what vocabulary exists in the language, what words mean, and you learn about the grammar almost like as if it was a bunch of math formulas. You memorize the structures of sentences.
Yes, and what he says about this is that it basically teaches you to talk about the language.
And you use this conscious knowledge that you learn to think in your native language and then translate your thoughts into the target language. So that's what Stephen Krashen calls learning. And then on the other hand, there's this process called language acquisition, which is how we learned our first language, which is when you get exposure to comprehensible input in the language and you kind of, through an unconscious process, start to build an intuition for how the language works. And once you've acquired a sufficient base of the language, you start being able to kind of speak naturally.
Oh, Riveroon, I actually explained... You didn't miss anything. Oh, hello, Riveroon's niece, the Scarecrow. What you missed was me saying I don't really know what the drama was. I mean, I know that there is some discussion around... She did a video where she was talking about... visible poverty in certain parts of Tokyo and some graffiti, but other than that, I've not actually seen what people have said, in response to it.
And this was my experience in Japanese. And so I think that ultimately the only way to reach really high levels of fluency is through acquisition, because that skill building approach is just too limited. If you're always thinking in your native language and trying to translate in your head, first of all, that's really slow. Second of all, it's going to lead to an unnatural result, because language is
especially with Japanese, because the whole way that phrases are formed, how expressions are formed in Japanese, is just totally different to how you talk and how you do it in English. Like direct translations between, direct word for word translations between Japanese and English, I mean, in either direction, make no sense. Much of the time.
Very highly specific and unpredictable way. So oftentimes you just have to know a natural way to express a given idea. You can't just kind of deduce how to say it by thinking in English and then translating it with grammar rules that you memorized. It won't.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, and in Japanese there's so many phrases like that. I mean, if you watch a well-translated J-drama with English subtitles, you will often hear the exact same phrase translated in like 10 different ways. Like, onegai shimasu. I mean, if you learn, the way they teach this, in schools and stuff like that, and for learners they'll say that this means like please, or please give me something. But the thing is that in Japanese it's used in a million different ways. So, it's often used as a substitute for an implied request. So the request will be something like, go over there. But instead of saying that literally you would say, like, そちらの方へお願いします. Like, I politely request in that direction. Now you say that, you say that directly, you translate that directly into English, and it makes no fucking sense. None. If you were to translate directly from English into Japanese, people would probably understand you, but it wouldn't sound great. It wouldn't be the way that people would actually talk in Japanese in that context to make that request.
To a natural result. And so I think that if there was a language school that was built around acquisition, and actually there are schools like this in Thailand for teaching foreigners Thai.
Oh, okay. So he is talking about NLG or ALG. It is ALG, but now I'm forgetting what the hell does the A stand for? Because I thought it was natural language growth. ALG language growth. Is it automatic language growth? Automatic language growth. Okay, I was confused because I was thinking natural language growth. Okay, so he's talking about ALG, but ALG is actually you could call it a fork from what Krashen was talking about. Because ALG is what says you shouldn't speak early. Krashen says you shouldn't force people to speak before they're ready, and people will start speaking when they're ready. Yes, yeah, I saw that. I saw a clip because there was a Free Gaza graffiti that was in there, which, I mean, fuck yeah. Nice, you love to see it.
Automatic language growth. There are these programs where they have native speakers who speak to learners of Thai for many hours every day, and they use props and they write on the board and they make it very interactive so that you can understand what they're saying, and they kind of speak simply at first, but they don't force the students to speak at the beginning.
I will say, I'm just sitting here thinking about this. The amount of natural input, I'm thinking specifically about Japanese, since we're talking about Japanese and Chinese here in this video. The amount of actual just natural input that I got versus the amount of actual speaking that I did, I mean, I would say the ratio was massively in favor of input. I mean, because overwhelmingly what I was doing with Japanese for much of the time in like the first decade of my use of the language was like watching things, listening to people talk, listening to music. I mean, I haven't watched too much of what she said, of her videos. I've always kind of not been keen on the name of the channel. Like, white lady from North America calling herself, like, Oriental Pearl. I'm not really, that's not great as far as I'm concerned, apart from, the problems with the word Oriental to begin with. So, yeah. So I haven't really watched much other than this, just because of that. But, like, I mean, just my speaking, other than, like, very sort of contrived experiences in classroom environments, of which I had very few, like, because one of the problems in my overwhelmingly poor school district was we did have this magnet school with a language program that taught Japanese, but finding somebody who knew Japanese, who would teach Japanese for what they were able to pay for it, was difficult. So often we got people who didn't know Japanese, or didn't really know anything about teaching Japanese. And that was kind of a problem. So that was often that. So what I was doing on my own was a much more significant part of the process than anything that was going on in school, because the pace was just painfully slow. But yeah, I mean, but like the time I spent in Japan, which is actually minimal, it was like, I mean, it was a summer. It was very important, and especially because it was the first time I really had to interact with the language on a daily basis, and played a major role. And also, I bought a whole bunch of books while I was there, which also played a huge role. But other than that, I mean, it was very much input heavy. The next time that I actually was speaking Japanese a lot would have been, you know, my first year at university, and also the work that I was doing then, because I was doing interpretation and stuff.
It's actually just speak their native language back.
And by that time, I was already speaking well enough that a lot of the time I could be confused for a native speaker if I was on the phone or otherwise not visible.
Over time, as they start to understand more and build an intuition for the language, they start being able to speak more naturally. And this is, I think, the ideal. So if you're talking about a language school like that, then I would be all for it, and I think that's pretty ideal. But with the language schools that they have, like in Tokyo, where they're just forcing you to memorize all this stuff consciously. And
it's Minna no Nihongo. I've heard so much vilification of that textbook.
Trying to get you to like, translate in your head. I have met very few people who had a lot of success with this method.
Fair enough, because the language schools in Tokyo were not that good. They were mostly for people trying to get into Senmon Gakko. But I did make a lot of progress at the Chinese school, and I think they did a very good job with that. Now, about this point, a silent period where you don't talk at all for the first 6 months, no output, just input.
I mean, it's worth noting, the term silent period refers actually to a natural phenomenon that is just observed in the acquisition process. In any, you know, whether it's your L1, whether it's subsequently acquired languages, that is just a normal thing that happens.
Input. Well, like I said, there's more than one way to make an omelet, and at the end of the day, if you work hard enough, both you and I are gonna achieve our goals and reach a high level of that language, but I argue that I could do it faster than you.
Yeah, except, okay, but I don't think she's actually really clear on what her method even was. She's given a lot of weight to these classroom experiences, without considering the fact that she then went home, and when she was at home, she was surrounded by Chinese input. Much of it made comprehensible to her by, you know, thoughtful people around her who were interacting with her, knowing roughly where she was at in terms of her level. So...
Because you missed out on the first 6 months. You were completely silent because you're saying that it's going to confuse you. You should just listen and, you know, copy native speakers as it is. But there's an innumerable number of possibilities of word combinations and sentence combinations. The amount of input you're going to need to reach that, I think it's rather slow.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like, naturally, this is not a process that can really be rushed. There is kind of, I would say, I'm not saying that there is a speed that you can say on a one-size-fits-all basis, because there are so many factors individually that you would have to get into. But there is going to tend to be some sort of limit. Like, I think everyone can agree that you're not going to go from no Japanese at all to fluent, you know, C2 Japanese, JLPT1 past, in a week and a half. No matter how much fucking input you get, no matter how much of whatever method you're using in that time. It's just not going to be enough time. There is a limit to the speed with which you're going to be able to do it, just because there's a limit to your ability to process things. And now you can optimize in terms of the input you get. You can optimize in terms of what you do with that input. Because comprehensible input is not a method. It's an ingredient. There are lots of ways to make an omelet, but eggs or some sort of egg-like substitute substance are always going to be part of the process of making it.
And I don't think it damages you to make mistakes in the very beginning. What damages people...
It doesn't damage you to make mistakes in general, actually.
...is when they make the same mistakes for 5, 10 years of speaking English, for example. A lot of my students, they have these habits that I can't even help them correct at this
Well, I mean, her students, it's worth noting, are generally going to be in non-English environments. If those same students were actually, if she were teaching them in, I don't know, in Chicago or Louisville or something, rather than Tokyo or Beijing, they would be hearing English all the time. It would be part of their daily lives, and those mistakes would probably disappear quickly. She's dealing with people whose main experience of English is in the classroom.
It's so ingrained in their brain, but that is not necessarily from the first 6 months of language learning, but from many years of not learning from their own mistakes. I don't have any bad habits that I picked up, and it's
See, I feel like when people say this, I'm not picking on her here, but it's like, how would you know? How would you know it's not a bad habit? That you don't have a bad habit? Because sometimes what she's talking about are bad habits are things that make perfect sense to you. So you would not be mentally saying, oh, I got that wrong. You would mentally be feeling that you got that right. And only if you ever discover in some way that you're using something in a way that is not correct, that word does not mean what you think it means, only then would you realize that you had a bad habit. So I feel like, I mean, saying things like this is, yeah, I mean, the level of, you need more self-awareness than that. Like, I will say, like, this is something that happens with people in any language. Sometimes, for example, and this is definitely a big problem in Japanese because there's so many different ways to read kanji, words in kanji. You can see a word only in writing. You just never interact with it anywhere else. And you develop, based on the way these things normally behave, a certain understanding of how you would read it. But you've never really had occasion to hear anyone say it, or really to use it, because it's just something you see in writing. So if you were to use it in a sentence orally, you would say it wrong, even though you would write it correctly. But then you actually hear somebody use it. Like, for example, you're listening to an audiobook while following along in the text, and you say, and that word comes up, and it's like, holy shit. Actually, I've been saying that wrong all this time. Okay, now I know how to say it. That is a thing that happens, and just because you've been doing it for a long time, I mean, I had this happen with a word that it means like the contents of a thing. It's pronounced nakami. It is naka as in middle and mi as in body. And I had never heard anyone ever say it for like 20 years, easily, longer. And so I had looked at that in writing and had assumed that it was pronounced chushin. But I never said it. I only ever read it. And then I heard somebody say it, and it's like, oh, wait a second. That's how you say that. And since then, I say nakami. There was no fossilization. like 20 years of misreading a word, you would think if fossilization were a thing, that would be a good example. But the thing is that it isn't. It doesn't work like that. It is something that we see in a contrived artificial environment of classrooms.
I don't think it's despite the fact that I learned in the first 6 months. I think that was a really good period where I had a teacher by my side who could correct me all the time. I would try to put the sentences together, and I would be correct sometimes. I wasn't 100% wrong every.
It's like, I mean, I just really think she overvalues the classroom experience. Like, she talks a lot about the classroom experience, and clearly it seems to have been a positive experience for her. She enjoyed the experience. Just the way she talks about it, she kind of lights up when she's talking about it. But I feel like if you were going to tease out what the actual method that she was using at that time was, you'd have to talk about all sorts of stuff that she would not have considered consciously applying a method in the first place.
Every time I tried to make my own sentence, I did get it right sometimes. And the times I got it wrong, she corrected me. I memorized those mistakes, and I grew from it. So I would say that I am proof that you can start from day one, and I encourage people to start from day one. It is unorthodox, actually, to not start speaking from day one. I mean,
unorthodox is not a criticism in this context, because the thing is that a lot of orthodoxy about how languages should be taught and learned sucks shit. It's worthless. When it came time to actually study it and see if there was an empirical basis for it, it turned out there wasn't. A lot of this orthodoxy, when there are studies backing it up, they're tiny sample sizes and extremely contrived experimental conditions. So saying, oh, it's unorthodox, that's not a criticism. It's like the orthodoxy is based on very little.
I've never heard that before for my TEFL course. I've never heard that from any linguist. It's Matt's.
She hasn't heard it from any linguist. I mean, what linguist is she listening to? Like, he's named a linguist who's actually one of the foremost researchers in this field. And there are lots of others where that came from.
Which is fine. But I'm gonna
No, it's Stephen Krashen's theory.
Stephen Krashen's
He's
theory.
a famous linguist.
Okay.
I mean, and it's not just his theory. I mean, he is one of the leading proponents of it. But there are lots of other people working along those lines. The reason that 40 years has gone by and people are still working along those lines and developing teaching programs along those lines is that it has actually shown good results.
How long did it take you to learn Japanese also, Matt? Because I think that you could have thrown Chinese in there if you had started a little earlier with speaking. That maybe it would slow someone down a little bit if they didn't start in the first 6 months.
I hardly spoke in the first 6 months.
Well, I think I reached, I've been studying Japanese for 10 years total, but I basically reached the level that I reach now in a 5-year period.
Oh my gosh.
And personally...
5 years.
And I've never met someone else who was...
Yeah, okay, I'm curious. Is her oh my gosh because she feels that's short or because she feels that's long? Because it's worth noting that according to the State Department... Foreign Service Institute figures that she was agreeing with Language Jones on, though I don't know to what extent she's actually really aware of the caveats around those figures. And Japanese takes quite a lot longer to reach the same level in as all sorts of other languages that are commonly studied. Japanese takes a while.
There's a lot of people who are better at Japanese than me, but they have been studying Japanese for like 20 plus years. I've never met someone who reached the level I reached in just 5 years. So I think I actually learned really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Given that you're in the US, you're in an English speaking environment, that is pretty quick.
Oh wow, okay. I thought he was in Japan.
That is pretty quick.
Because I think the key is I focus on cultivating an intuition for how Japanese is supposed to sound,
Yes.
what is natural, and because I had this intuition, when I started speaking, I got good really quickly. Like, I basically, the first couple times I spoke, I was already mostly fluent, and within a couple weeks, I was already...
Okay. I mean, I have to say, personally, if I'm on a train and people aren't sitting next to me, unless it's somebody that I came with, that I am like intentionally traveling with, I consider it a favor not to sit next to me. I like the extra space.
totally fluent. Because I had it in my head. I just had to learn how to get it out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, that is also, I mean, a lot of what the work that's done on language acquisition. It's all about building up this infrastructure in your head that will allow you at a certain point, when it reaches a kind of a critical mass, to be able to start taking it out of your head and putting it into other places like your mouths.
There's a little thing with muscle memory as well with the speaking aspects. There's some similarities between.
Yeah, wait. I mean, when you say she wouldn't call it that, are you saying that she said it wasn't that, or she just didn't use that word? I mean, yeah.
Playing an instrument and speaking a language where your mouth has to move in a certain way, and you might hear it, but it takes a little bit of training to repeat those sounds, especially with Chinese and the tones and the weird positions you have to put your tongue in to make some of these sounds. And I would argue that if you're only getting input in the first 6 months, that you're not going to develop that muscle memory, and in that case it's going to slow your pronunciation
I didn't know about that, though.
acquisition down a little, well, quite a lot for 6 months.
Well, so
I mean, what she's saying is very speculative, and it's based on an incomplete understanding of her own approach to doing this. I mean, you're quite right. I mean, that what is called in Japanese chikan, which is people who, like, will do, like, sexual harassment, sexual assault on public transport. I mean, that definitely is essa. It is generally one of the less invasive forms of it. Okay, did she cover the guy's face, or was it already like that? Is what I'd want to know. Because the thing is, if you're actually, I mean, if she's in Japan for legal reasons, that would be a safe thing to do, because you could potentially be facing charges if you left, because then you. There are legal reasons why you'd want to actually be careful about showing anyone's face, but leaving their faces showing is odd. But I mean, I do wonder, like, was this video already edited, and she was just showing it, or did she make those edits?
there's two things you got to separate.
I mean, I would say that's not great.
One is your perception of the sounds, and the other one is your ability to produce the sounds. So, for example, at the level you're at now with Chinese, when you listen to most most second language speakers of Chinese speak Chinese, you can hear what is off about the pronunciation, right? It's just like how, when either of us hear a second language speaker of English, whenever they mispronounce something or they get a vowel off or a consonant off, it's like we immediately can hear what is wrong. We don't have to think about it. It's just like clear as day intuition. Just like when you hear someone sing and they miss the note. And so that is what I call perception. It's you have an intuitive and embodied direct sense of what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm following him. This makes sense so far.
And so as a beginner, there's no way that you're going to be able to get this through practice. Like, you can get closer and closer to the sound by having a native speaker correct you.
Yeah, I mean, and part of it is just because you may actually also just, I mean, I know I was doing it, just sort of vocalize on your own, and Like, one thing I did a lot of, actually, is on my own, you know, with these books that I would have, is I would read them aloud. I would just kind of read them aloud to just get my mouth around the sounds, without anyone there correcting me or anything. Just to sort of, use the, have the language in my mouth, really. Okay, so... She didn't, like, explicitly say she didn't consider it those things. She just didn't use the term. I mean, I think that... I mean, to me, those are slightly different things. Because it's one thing if you actually explicitly say, yeah, this isn't that. And it's another thing if you just keep on using the term that is most commonly used for it in Japan, that, I mean, would generally be understood to be that thing.
But in order to be able to hear it, you have to actually listen to actual Chinese for hundreds and thousands of hours. That's the only way to get the ear for exactly what it's supposed to sound like. And so for me in Japanese...
And I find it also helps if you're also looking at it in writing. That is, in terms of, like, sort of connecting your understanding, your intuition of what these things written down would sound like to somebody actually who is a native speaker saying them, actually having, like, Japanese text, Japanese subtitles, and Japanese speech is very useful for that. It helps kind of, it helps craft that intuition, shape it.
When I first started speaking, I knew exactly what Japanese was, not exactly, but I had a pretty good ear for what it was supposed to sound like, and because of that, I could give myself feedback very quick.
Yes,
so
yeah.
I could kind of create this feedback loop where I'd say something, I could hear it was off. I'd say it, I'd move my tongue a little bit, I'd say it again, it was a little closer. I'd move my tongue again, it got a little closer. And so within just a couple weeks, I could go from not great pronunciation to pretty great pronunciation because I knew what it was supposed to sound like. That's why I think the perception is the most key thing, and that comes from input and actually listening to what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah, I mean, so much of my pronunciation actually comes from exactly this, because one of the things that I would do for a long time is I've mentioned this on stream numerous times at this point, but I had these dubs of, like, X-Files and a couple of episodes of ER, amongst other things. And I watched the shit out of those till a point where I was actually understanding the words. And understanding the words necessarily meant understanding things like the pitch accent. I didn't know what pitch accent was at the time. I hadn't heard the term before. But understanding that actually what, I might have read as hachi no su, if I had run across it in writing, was actually pronounced hachi no su. Hachi no su. Understanding this interaction between the different pitches and things like that. Which, of course, there's a positive feedback there, because if you notice that no actually ends up getting emphasized in the pitch accent scheme, then, that is something that for other structures that are similar, and you can continue, and it's like a global find replace a little bit.
I agree about the input things, but at the same time, especially with pronunciation, now I was a business major, so I kind of think of things in economical terms sometimes. You have a diminishing margin of return. That, well, for me...
I mean, and this is... this is probably also part of why her views on this are the way they are, because the trouble with trying to understand this process in, like, the terms of capitalist economic ideology is that that's not how it works. Okay, I hope all of the stuff that you must attend goes well. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Like, that's not how any of this necessarily works. I mean, although I will agree, like, there is such a thing as diminishing returns in language acquisition. I mean, for example, like, Krashen is talking about optimal input. When he talks about optimal input, he's talking about input that actually includes things that you aren't quite to the point of getting, but that you can get. And at a certain point, I mean, if you're listening to the same types of input over and over again, maybe at a certain point you've got all that stuff, so you're getting everything out of it that you possibly could get. And then you could say you are at a point of diminishing returns, and you need more stuff that includes structures that you don't have yet. But, I mean, I think it's something you have to be careful with. And I think it is also kind of explains a bit of her bias towards thinking that more sort of grind-centric approaches to things are necessarily better approaches.
About at this
I mean,
point,
it very much sort of the whole bourgeois Protestant work ethic kind of thing.
I'm still working on Japanese, especially here in Tokyo. I have time to do that. But Chinese, I think I've reached about as close to native as I'm gonna get, considering that I started at after 20 years old. I think you started Japanese when you were still a teenager, right? You were a high school student?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's
yeah,
good.
like 16.
Then you have a little bit more of a chance.
Oh, interesting. Although I would suppose, like, I mean, if you're in any major city in, like, modern times, you know, in Prague, in Brno, Karlovy Vary, I mean, these days, you would have absolutely no trouble finding comprehensible input in the form of drunk tourists.
Rather than someone who started, say, Japanese at 25 years old.
And I will say, I don't think I sound like a native speaker. I definitely don't. I'm not perfect. And I also agree that there's diminishing returns after a certain point, and it doesn't make sense to obsess over perfection too
Right,
much,
you
especially
should
pronunciation.
get as good.
Well, I mean, I would say it kind of has to do, okay, your speech is always changing in all languages that you have. Because things adapt. The new words come into being. You find out that the word that you've been using for a long time doesn't mean the thing that you think it means. Or it turns out it means something that really, really sucks, and therefore you probably should not still be using it. And, you know, we're constantly making these sorts of changes. Sometimes consciously, sometimes less consciously. And so there may be sort of a moment where your, you know, attempts to consciously, deliberately change certain things about the way you talk start to stop being particularly useful. But that doesn't mean that your development has stopped. It just means that that particular approach to it has run aground a bit.
As you can, but at the end of the day, I told my students, you know, I've seen people speak perfect English and work at a bookstore, and people like Japanese businessmen who spoke English with a little bit of an accent that were, you know, executives in companies. They just put that energy towards other aspects of their lives, like IT or business management skills or something else. So you got diminishing a margin on returns. You spend 100 hours like perfecting your Japanese these little.
I mean, again, with number of hours, it's like, okay, but what are you doing with those hours? It's not, I mean, yeah, the number of hours, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, it definitely matters, but it's a matter of what you're doing in them. Yeah, and I have to say, I have my doubts about that. But, I mean, if it results in, like, me being able to have a seat to myself, a row to myself on the Tokyo Metro, I'll take it.
Sounds these little inconsistencies.
I mean, it's like when that just reminds me of when, you know, guys would be like, hey, now you can't even touch a woman at work because of Me Too. You're gonna regret that, ladies. And it's like, yeah, still not regretting that. I'm that's perfect. That's all I was wanting. But I can't even talk about about my opinions about your body type. Wow, you're gonna throw that in for free, are you? Like, yeah, no, this is good. All these are literally the demands. It's like, that's like, I mean, if bosses were like, you know, with these unions and these workers and these strikes and stuff, now you can't pay people less than a living wage. You're gonna regret that. And it's like, no, that's like literally my goal. That's literally what we were kind of hoping for, actually. We're not complaining. Feel free to throw in more, actually.
A little more, or you could spend 100 hours learning IT and make more money at your job or something like that. So, I mean, there's a balance to be found there. And at the end of the day, when you start like Japanese, as I did at 25 years old, there's limitations there. I really can't become a native speaker. It's never going to happen. But that didn't stop me from going to Waseda. That didn't hold me back during the international relations courses that I took there, talking with Japanese people doing presentations. I got my meaning across, and I still strive to improve, but I didn't study a lot with the pitch accent. You did a lot.
I will say, I don't think you necessarily need to deliberately study the pitch accent. You need to, I think pitch accent is important. I'm not one of these people who says that that's pointless. I mean, if you're going for a natural sounding pronunciation that will cause the least bit of difficulty in terms of Japanese speakers understanding you, you definitely want you definitely want consistent pitch accent. Doesn't necessarily have to be Hyojungo pitch accent. If it's regional pitch accent, that's fine, but pick one. You can't jump between them or it gets confusing but the thing is, I find if you become aware of what pitch accent sounds like, and you just sort of approximate that, you can get there. If you don't know what pitch accent sounds like, if you have to understand, you have to be able to hear it and perceive it, actually, as Matt was just saying. And once you can actually hear it and perceive it, then you're in a position to start, imitating it and getting it right.
Of lessons about that. I do think there's value in that, but at the end of the day, you got to balance that with other things as well.
Definitely.
We only have so much time.
And I only have so much time, and that's just such a perfect way to end this. Thank you to everyone who joined in. I hope you enjoyed the stream, and if you would like to stay in touch in between streams, there's a Discord where we can do that. My Discord channel on Discord with a Discord link that I'm about to give you. I'll be back tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. US Eastern Time, and I look forward to seeing you then. Have a good night, and I'll